Impressionism Art Revolution. Imagine stepping into a time machine, setting the dial for Paris in the 1860s. You're not visiting the glittering court of an emperor, but the hallowed, stuffy halls of the official Paris Salon, the most powerful art institution in the world. What do you see? On the walls, stretching from floor to ceiling, are colossal canvases. They depict epic historical battles, dramatic scenes from Greek mythology, and impossibly perfect portraits of aristocrats. The style is meticulous, almost photographic. Every brushstroke is blended away into a smooth, polished surface. The colors are dark, somber, and earthy. Browns, deep reds, and shadowy blacks dominate. This is what serious art is. It is grand, it is moralizing, and it is controlled by a rigid academy that dictates what can be painted, how it can be painted, and who is allowed to succeed. For a young artist, acceptance into the salon is everything. It is the only path to recognition, to commissions, to a career. Rejection means obscurity and failure. Now, leave the salon and walk through the bustling streets of a rapidly changing Paris. This is the city of Baron Haussmann's new wide boulevards, of gas lamps beginning to flicker on at dusk, of steam-belching trains arriving at the Gare Saint-Lazare, of ordinary people enjoying a new concept called leisure in parks and riverside cafes. This modern world, vibrant, chaotic, and full of fleeting moments, is nowhere to be found on the walls of the salon. And for a group of young, rebellious artists meeting in the Café Gerbois, this disconnect was not just an oversight, it was an artistic crisis. They saw a world shimmering with light and movement, and an art establishment that refused to see it. These were the radicals, the outsiders, Camille Pissarro, Alfred Sisley, and the future titans we know as Monet, Renoir, and Degas. They believed art didn't have to be about the distant past. It could be about the immediate present. It could be about the here and now. This was the philosophical bombshell that created Impressionism. The goal was no longer to paint a thing, but to paint the essence of the thing. To capture the sensation of a moment, the impression an instant makes on the eye, before the brain has time to process the details and name what it's seeing. It was a radical shift from objective reality to subjective perception. The truth wasn't in the object itself, but in the light that bounced off it and the atmosphere that surrounded it. To achieve this, they had to invent a whole new way of painting, a new visual language that broke every rule in the academic handbook. First, they escaped the studio. For centuries, landscape painting was done indoors, based on sketches and memory. The Impressionists, enabled by a crucial piece of modern technology, the pre-mixed paint tube, dragged their easels, canvases, and paints outdoors. They began painting plein air. This was revolutionary. It forced them to work quickly, to capture the changing light before the sun moved across the sky. There was no time for careful drawing or smooth blending. They had to invent shortcuts. This need for speed led directly to their most famous and, at the time, most scandalous technique, the visible, broken brushstroke. Instead of creating a seamless surface, they applied paint in short, thick dabs, dashes, and commas of pure, unmixed color. They realized that placing a dab of blue next to a dab of yellow would, from a distance, create a more vibrant and shimmering green than if they had mixed the two colors on the palette. The viewer's eye would do the mixing, a phenomenon called optical mixing. This made their canvases vibrant with an unprecedented energy and light. They also revolutionized the use of color. They banished the dark, muddy browns and blacks of the salon from their palettes. They observed that shadows weren't simply black or gray, they were filled with the reflected light and color of their surroundings. A shadow on a sunlit haystack might be filled with blues and purples from the sky. The color black was almost completely abandoned, with dark tones being created from mixtures of other colors. They were painting light itself, and light was color. In 1874, after years of repeated rejection from the official salon, this group of rebels decided to take matters into their own hands. They pooled their money and staged their own independent exhibition in the former studio of the photographer Nadar. The response from the critics and the public was not just negative, it was pure, unadulterated outrage. They were called charlatans. Their work was deemed sloppy, unfinished, and an insult to the grand tradition of French painting. One critic, Louis Leroy, seized upon the title of a hazy, atmospheric painting of a harbor by Claude Monet. In a scathing satirical review, he mockingly titled his article, "The Exhibition of the Impressionists." He meant it as a profound insult. He wrote that the painting was less finished than wallpaper in its most embryonic state. But the artists, defiant and in need of a name for their new style, embraced the term. They were the Impressionists. They had a name for their revolution. What the establishment saw as a lack of finish, they saw a new kind of truth, the truth of the fleeting, sensory world. They had shattered the polished mirror of academic art and replaced it with a window onto modern life, a window still dappled with the light of a single brilliant moment. This was the first shot fired in the war for modern art, a battle that would dethrone the academies and forever change how we see the world. Block 2. Monet, Renoir, Degas, Masterworks. The Impressionist Revolution was not a uniform movement. It was a dynamic, often argumentative, collective of fiercely individual talents. At its heart were three artists who, while sharing a common goal of capturing modern life, approached it from such distinct perspectives that they became the three primary pillars of the movement: Claude Monet, the obsessive observer of light; Pierre-Auguste Renoir, the sensual celebrator of life; and Edgar Degas, the detached, radical composer of urban scenes. To understand Impressionism, you have to understand them. Let's begin with the man whose painting gave the movement its name, Claude Monet. If Impressionism had a high priest, it was Monet. More than any other, he was devoted to its central principle, that light is the primary subject of painting. His entire life was a relentless, almost scientific pursuit of capturing the most ephemeral and intangible qualities of the natural world. For Monet, the object itself, be it a haystack, a cathedral, or a pond, was secondary. It was merely a vessel for the light that fell upon it. This obsession led him to his most groundbreaking innovation, the series. He would take a single subject and paint it over and over again at different times of day, in different weather, and across different seasons. Consider his haystack series from the 1890s. He painted over 24 canvases of simple haystacks in a field near his home in Giverny. To a traditionalist, this was madness. Why paint the same boring subject so many times? But Monet wasn't painting haystacks. He was painting time. He was painting the frosty blue light of a winter morning, the blazing white gold of a summer noon, the deep orange and violet glow of a sunset. Each canvas is a record of a specific moment, a unique atmospheric condition that would never exist again. He would famously line up multiple canvases, moving from one to the next as the light shifted throughout the day. He continued this practice with his Rouen Cathedral series, dissolving the solid stone architecture of the Gothic facade into a shimmering tapestry of light and color, proving that even the most permanent structures are transformed by the fleeting moment. This quest reached its apotheosis in his final years with the Monumental series. In his custom-built water garden at Giverny, he found his ultimate subject, the reflective surface of water, where earth and sky meet, where form dissolves into pure color. These late works, especially the huge panoramic canvases in Paris's Musée de l'Orangerie, are immersive environments that verge on total abstraction, making him a true prophet of 20th century art. Now, turn from Monet's solitary communion with nature to the bustling, joyful world of Pierre-Auguste Renoir. If Monet was the eye of Impressionism, Renoir was its heart. He once said, "For me, a picture should be a pleasant thing, joyful and pretty." While Monet was chasing light across a field, Renoir was in the middle of a Parisian party, capturing the warmth of human connection. His art is a celebration of beauty, youth, and the simple pleasures of life. His canvases are filled with people, friends, lovers, children, laughing, dancing, and enjoying themselves. Look at his masterpiece, Bal du Moulin de la Galette. This is not just a painting, it's the sound of chatter and music, the feeling of sunlight on your skin. Renoir masterfully captures the effect of light filtering through the acacia trees, dappling the clothes and faces of the dancers in patches of pink and blue. Unlike Monet's distinct, blocky strokes, Renoir's brushwork is feathery and caressing, creating a soft, shimmering haze. He excelled at rendering the texture of skin, the sheen of silk, the bloom on a young woman's cheek. He loved painting the human figure, which set him apart from landscape-focused painters like Monet and Pissarro. His is another triumph, a complex group portrait of his friends enjoying an afternoon on a restaurant balcony. It feels spontaneous, like a snapshot, yet it is a brilliantly orchestrated composition, radiating a sense of warmth, friendship, and the good life. Renoir's Impressionism is fundamentally optimistic and humane, a loving ode to a world he clearly adored. Finally, we come to the great paradox of the movement, Edgar Degas. Degas was a core member of the Impressionist group. He exhibited in 7 of their 8 shows. Yet he detested the label. "I am a realist," he insisted. He rejected the practice of painting, preferring the controlled environment of the studio where he could compose his pictures from drawings and memory. But while his methods were different, his subjects and his way of seeing were profoundly modern and aligned with the Impressionist spirit. He was the ultimate observer of urban life. Degas was not interested in sun-drenched landscapes or joyous parties. He was drawn to the artificial worlds of the ballet, the racetrack, and the café concert. He was a master of capturing movement and the unguarded moment. His most famous subjects, the ballet dancers, are rarely shown in the glory of a final performance. Instead, he shows them in rehearsal, exhausted, adjusting a slipper, or waiting in the wings. He reveals the grit, discipline, and sheer physical labor behind the graceful illusion. His genius, however, was in his composition. Heavily influenced by the new art of photography and Japanese woodblock prints, Degas created radical, daring compositions that no one had ever seen before. He would crop figures at the edge of the canvas, use steep, plunging perspectives, as if viewing the scene from an opera box high above, and use large areas of empty floor space to create psychological tension. He gives you the sense that you are not just seeing a scene, but catching a clandestine glimpse of it. He was a master draftsman, a brilliant psychologist, and a compositional innovator whose modern vision pushed the boundaries of what a painting could be, securing his place as one of the most complex and fascinating figures of his time. Monet, Renoir, and Degas. 3 distinct geniuses, 1 shared revolution. Block 3. NGV 2025 Exhibition Legacy. So we have these 3 towering figures, Monet, Renoir, Degas, and the revolutionary movement they spearheaded. But why, over 150 years later, are we still so captivated? Why does Impressionism continue to be one of the most beloved and popular art movements in history, drawing massive crowds to exhibitions like the upcoming NGV 2025 showcase? The answer lies in its profound and enduring legacy, a legacy that not only reshaped the entire trajectory of art, but also continues to resonate deeply with our modern sensibilities. Its influence is so foundational that it's almost invisible, woven into the very fabric of how we think about art today. First and foremost, Impressionism democratized beauty. Before the Impressionists, great art was for great subjects, gods, heroes, kings, and epic historical events. The Impressionists declared that beauty was not confined to the grand and the noble. It could be found everywhere, in the most ordinary moments of everyday life. A train pulling into a smoky station, a woman reading a book in a sunlit garden, a crowded Parisian street on a rainy day, a simple bowl of fruit on a tablecloth. By choosing these subjects, they elevated the commonplace and taught us to see the world around us with new eyes. They gave us permission to find beauty in our own lives, in our own backyards. This accessibility is a huge part of its timeless appeal. The paintings feel familiar, human, and relatable in a way a dramatic mythological scene often doesn't. They don't require a deep knowledge of history or literature to be appreciated. They require only an open eye and a willing heart. This revolutionary shift in subject matter was matched by the revolution in technique, which blew the doors of the art world wide open for future generations. By breaking from the rigid, polished style of the Academy, the Impressionists proved that there wasn't just one correct way to paint. Their emphasis on individual perception over objective reality was the critical first step towards abstraction. The generation that followed, the post-Impressionists, took the Impressionists' innovations and pushed them even further. Van Gogh took their vibrant color and visible brushwork and infused it with raw emotion. Cézanne took their study of light and form and used it to deconstruct and rebuild reality, paving the way for Cubism. Seurat took their optical mixing and turned it into the rigorous, scientific system of pointillism. Every major modern art movement of the early 20th century, from Fauvism to Expressionism, owes a direct and profound debt to the trail blazed by the Impressionists. They were the Big Bang of modern art. This brings us to the importance of an event like the NGV 2025 exhibition. In our age of infinite digital reproduction, where we can see any painting in the world on our screens in a split second, it's easy to forget the power of the original object. But to truly understand Impressionism, you must experience it in person. No photograph can capture the three-dimensional texture of the paint, the thick impasto that catches the light. No screen can replicate the true luminous vibration of colors placed side by side, the optical shimmer that makes the canvas seem to breathe. Standing in front of a large-scale Monet water lilies painting is an immersive, physical experience. You feel the presence of the artist's hand in every stroke. The exhibition becomes a time capsule, a direct connection to that revolutionary moment in 19th century Paris. It allows us to walk through the story, to see the dialogue between the artists, to understand how Renoir's figures conversed with Degas's compositions, and how Monet's landscapes pushed them all forward. Ultimately, the Impressionists' quest is our own. This is the central idea behind our channel, the Echoes of Modern. The Impressionists were the first artists to truly grapple with the experience of modernity, the speed, the change, the fragmentation of urban life, the feeling of fleeting moments slipping through our fingers. And their primary tool for capturing it, the quick, spontaneous impression, is something we understand intuitively today. Every time we pull out our phones to capture a beautiful sunset, a candid moment with friends, or the way the light hits a city street, we are chasing the same impulse. We are trying to freeze a fleeting moment of beauty. They were the original documentarians of the ephemeral. Their fascination with light, their celebration of the everyday, and their desire to capture a subjective, personal vision of the world are all echoes we hear in our own 21st century lives. When you stand before these masterpieces at the NGV 2025, you are doing more than just looking at pretty pictures. You are witnessing the birth of the modern eye, a revolution in a single brushstroke, an echo that never fades.